How y'all doing? Can you hear me? All right. Thanks for coming out for the session. So I have a quick question for you. How many people here are administrators who might be responsible for device management at their organization? Anybody? So, okay. How many people here are aware of or know that they have some form of device management on their devices so they can access their corporate resources? Pretty good share of hands, good. So, okay. So my name is Brad Meador, and I'm product manager, product lead for Google Mobile Management. Google Mobile Management is part of our cloud identity offering, and it's also integrated as part of the G Suite. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the convergence of identity and device management. We actually think of them as the same. Basically, we think of cloud identity as kind of spanning three pillars: users, devices, and applications. And as you'll see when I talk a little bit about device management traditionally does about a pillar and a half of those. So we cover the device piece, and we also cover a good bit of the application management piece. So, the idea here is that this is converging because all of our users have come to expect this kind of rich access anywhere on the go. And so fundamentally, your users want to be able to create access and share information with whoever they need, whenever they want, wherever they are, whatever device they have. And so our job is to figure out how to do that in a seamless way so that they remain secure, but they can get access to the information that they need. You guys have probably heard this in a half dozen presentations already, but the idea here is that the definition of the perimeter has changed. It used to be all about securing the network, and if you weren't on the network, tough luck. You didn't need access anyway in that area. But now what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that you can sit down at a Starbucks and gain access to the resources that you need very easily. So, and meanwhile, we're trying to manage here the proliferation of devices. So users are accessing more apps on more devices, and this number is actually dated a little bit. So we see 3+ devices on 10 apps. This is from a few years ago. So it wouldn't surprise me if these numbers have actually exploded even more. People are carrying more devices and accessing more applications on those devices. And so to give you a little primer of how I think about device management. So I think of kind of three areas of traditional device management. So there's actual management of the device, which is seeing an inventory of your fleet that's being used to access your corporate data. Being able to enforce policy on that device, so making sure that the device has a passcode on it, maybe making sure that it's encrypted, that sort of thing. Being able to check if the device has been compromised in some way prior to allowing access. Then there's application management, and that's why earlier when I was talking about users and devices and applications, I said we do about a pillar and a half, because on the mobile end, we want to make sure that end users have access to the applications they need through application whitelisting and through installing applications on those devices directly if we can. And there's also a whole bunch of work that all of the EMMs do around separating work and personal data. So you make sure if someone's they brought their own device, their personal device, you make sure that they can't leak their corporate data into personal accounts and try to prevent data exfiltration that way. And then there's an administration side. The administration side is managing the fleet, threat mitigation, like looking at what's going on across your devices. And the interesting thing about this, which I won't get into in too much detail here, but part of the reason that we think that device management is such a critical component of identity is when you start administering not just in these pillars, devices and apps and users, but you start to manage across all three, you can start to do some pretty interesting things where you might be able to detect your security posture across a user on this device in using this app rather than in silos where you're just protecting the apps or just protecting the user identity or just protecting the device. So this is the thing. So I'm on a mission here to make sure that if you're in an organization that doesn't have device management turned on, you need to turn it on. So more than 1/4 of smartphone owners do not use a screen lock. This is not just personal phones. This is across corporate phones that are used for corporate use as well. It's a shocking number to me, because I don't know if you've tried lately. It's really hard to turn off screen lock on your phones, like Android and iOS both make it very difficult, yet people are going and they're doing that. And the reason it's shocking to me is that it means that if you're allowing people to access their corporate email or to get on, say, Dropbox and access that on this device, and they leave it in a Starbucks, someone can just pick up that phone and start getting into your corporate data. That's just unacceptable. And so, but for whatever reason, about 1 in 10 devices are managed. About 1 in 10 devices that are used for business use are actually managed. And so what that means is there are a ton of devices out there running around with corporate data on them that have not been protected. And so if I think about why that is, I think it kind of falls along 3 areas. So there's a cost impact. So there's additional costs for a lot of these EMMs to put device management on your devices. There's a cost in terms of making your users jump through hoops to get it done. It can be very hard. And then the other thing is just awareness. I think that there are a lot of folks that maybe aren't aware of the fact that device management should be a critical component of their security. So I want to talk a little bit more about the painful side. So I do think that for those who have figured out that they need device management, when they start looking into it, there are so many hoops that they have to put their users through. And when I think about what we do, I'll show you my mission statement in the next slide. When I think about what we do, we're trying to manage or balance between making a device very secure, but also not getting in the way of the user. And so this is what happens with a lot of these device management folks, is you have to install an app. It's hard to get that app. You have to use a different email client than you're used to, or whatever, to get full device management. And that just doesn't work for a lot of people, and people throw their hands up and say, you know what, this is not worth it for me. So as I referenced earlier, so I think of my job as kind of balancing 2 sides of the same coin. So I want administrators to be able to serve up their data to any device, anywhere, anytime, in a secure way so that they're confident that they're not going to lose that data. But I want users to be really productive. And so I don't want them to get in the way. I don't want them to lose access just when they need it and that sort of thing. So our mission is maximizing user productivity while keeping data secure. At Google, for Google Mobile Management, it looks better on this screen than it looks on that screen. That's good. So we currently manage about 9.5 million devices. This is through our integration with both Cloud Identity and through integration with the G Suite. And so, as a little bit of a side, so we recently launched our Cloud Identity Premium offering in March, and what we did was we took all of the identity and device management and application management features that we have been building in the G Suite over years, and we peeled them off into a separate offering. And so, if you haven't heard about our Cloud Identity offering, I suggest that you take a look at it. So my team is focused currently on mobile management, so we work on Android and iOS. And if I give an honest assessment of where our capabilities are, we're a best-in-class Android management provider. We're best-in-class on iOS for BYOD, and we have a little bit more work that's coming this year to handle a corporate-owned use case. Let me talk to you a little bit about how we do that. I've got 3 sections here: comprehensive protection. So we manage these mobile devices through G Suite and Cloud. We manage on the application side not just the first-party apps like Gmail and Drive and Calendar, but we also manage any third-party app that is available in the enterprise app stores or in the like the Apple App Store or in Play. And we also manage private applications for Android right now. We'll manage private applications for iOS sometime soon. I want to note, I mentioned in the device management primer, we're huge fans of completely separating out personal and work data, and we use Android Work Profile to do that on the Android platform. We're a big fan. It seems like the Android Enterprise team has built kind of from the ground up for the enterprise use case. And we manage more Android Enterprise devices than any other EMM provider, which I guess shouldn't be surprising because we both are Google. So that said, so the number one thing that I'm focused on, I'm really trying to close that gap that I talked about earlier about 1 in 10 devices being managed. So there's that 90% that are unmanaged. And when I started thinking about like, okay, so there's an awareness problem, not enough people know they need to turn it on. It's really hard for people to get it going, and there's a cost problem. I thought, well, I can bring the power of Google to that to solve that problem. And so what we've done is we've implemented what I would call agentless device management that we can turn on by default for all of our cloud identity and all of our G Suite customers. And what that means is that I can inventory a device, I can wipe the account off the device should it become lost or stolen, and I can enforce a passcode on that device. And I could do it in a way that is completely transparent to the end user. The end user will not have to jump through any hoops. They won't have to install a new application. They can do, it's almost completely silent. In fact, the only time that an end user would know that we had device management on that phone is if they hadn't turned on a passcode. Well, guess what? I haven't had any administrators call me up and say, I'm really angry that you enforce the use of passcodes on my phones. So we've turned this agentless basic management on by default for all of our G Suite and all of our cloud identity customers. We just started this for new customers in March, and we're slowly rolling this out to all of our existing customer base. So what that means is I've solved the awareness problem, because even if you don't know you need device management, I've got your back when you do figure out that you should have had it turned on. And I've solved the cost problem because it's integrated as part of the SKU. And I've solved the jumping through hoops of the easy problem because I've just turned it on by default at no cost to administrator or end user. So all of that said, what I described was fairly basic management, right? I just get you three things, which is inventory, selective wipe, and passcode enforcement. But we do provide all the bells and whistles that you might need if you need a more bulletproof EMM. So if you do want to turn on compromised device protection, if you do want to start doing application management and making sure that your end users have secure access to the apps that they need, we can do all of those things as well. It comes at a little bit of a cost. There are a few more hoops that you have to jump through to turn it on and enable it. But the idea here is that Google has, you guys are probably as aware or more aware of the Google consumer side. So we build great consumer experiences, and what we're doing is we're taking that kind of expertise and we're applying that to enterprise software, and we're building great consumer experiences in the enterprise, great end user experiences, so that even when you do have to jump through a few extra hoops to install device management, we can do that in a way that's fairly unobtrusive. Google was recently named a Gartner Peer Insights Customer's Choice. This is, I'm pretty proud of this because we're actually not in the Gartner quadrant yet. To be in the Gartner quadrant, we need to expand beyond mobile to do desktop management as well. But our end users and our administrators wrote in and voted us as one of their favorite EMMs, and the reason is because of simplicity. So when you look at the comments, it's all around how easy we've made it to turn on device management. So I have one thing that I want you to take away here. So if you're working in an organization that's responsible for securing devices, please make sure that they use a device management tool. If they don't get it from Google, that's okay, but they got to get it somewhere, because it should be, like if your level of security used to be have a good identity and a passcode, right? You need to up the game and make it a good ID and a passcode and good device management. If you want to learn more about us, you can go to cloud.google.com/identity. And there's a whole bunch of detail around our new identity offering, and then there's some more information around mobile management. I think I went through that pretty quickly, so we can open it up for questions. And yes?
Talk about the fact that the user doesn't need to jump through hoops and enrollment is almost silent.
Yeah.
Is there any privacy or exceptions?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story. So I joined Google about 2 years ago, and I first worked on the Gmail team. And about the time I joined, one of my best friends from high school sends me an email that says, I'm no longer using my Gmail account, I'm switching to some other provider, and he had some security concerns. And I spent a long time explaining to him all of the things that I, as a product manager, have to do to get any feature launched. The smallest checkbox on our admin console goes through a security and a privacy. And so when we had the idea that we wanted to do this agentless management and we wanted to turn it on by default and we wanted to make it really easy, we spent a lot of time with our legal and our privacy teams to determine what was acceptable and not acceptable. And so in this particular case, for these basic functions, when you're talking about managing corporate accounts, there's no issue, because as an administrator who's providing these corporate accounts, you own those accounts. So now what we do is for advanced management, where we start to get a little more obtrusive and we start to look into, we have more control over the device. In some cases, we might be able to go in and wipe the device. We ask the user for consent. And it's basically like, you can allow us to do this, or you can decide that you don't want to access on this device, and that's the way it works. So, what else can I answer for y'all? Yes?
I know you were talking about enterprise use cases, but do you have any insight on the use of devices for customer use cases?
So that's an interesting question. So we are looking at ways to provide a more cost-effective and easy way to do device management, even for very small user bases. So, I don't have a consumer use case where, say, I'm partnered up with T-Mobile and they sell you a phone that happens to have device management on it that you can manage. At least I don't have that yet. So I'm looking at creative ways to get device management spread more broadly, because again, I think everyone should have this control. So for me personally, I put my parents' business as a small ranch in Texas, and I put them on a vanity domain and turned this on so I could do device management on their stuff because it was that easy, right, and fairly cheap. So, anybody else? Yes, back there.
Is Google collecting any, say, information from the MDMA related to targeted advertisements, or collecting any sort of feedback from customers?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. So that we collect some device information so that we can make policy decisions. We don't collect anything around like activity or anything like that. It's interesting. One of the things I mentioned earlier, I worked on Gmail for a while. One of the things that we did about a year ago is we get this kind of question all the time, and I think it relates back to our first Gmail release when we were scanning email content to provide ads, and we finally just said, you know what, we don't get a lot of value out of that, and it's confusing people about how private and secure we really are, and so we turned that off, and we don't do that anymore. So, does it? Yeah. Yeah, I don't collect anything like that as part of device management. I don't have the rights to do that. So, I saw a question over here. Yeah.
Do you have a roadmap, or is there any plans to move beyond mobile and get more into user devices?
Yeah, so there's only so much I can share in this environment. I will say that, and I probably should have highlighted this in the deck, we did recently launch a feature called endpoint verification. And one of my colleagues is the primary PM on that, and I think he's speaking later today, but I'll have to look that up. And what that does is it's an extension that resides in the Chrome browser, and right now it's reporting only. It reports back information on the device that you're on, so that you can have an inventory, so you can at least know, right, where people are accessing your corporate data from. So if, let's say you log into Gmail, if you have this extension enabled, then we're going to report back and know where that happened, and start collecting a little information about the device that's on. You could see that that's a pretty powerful tool, and we can start to think about ways that we can use it to actually do broader device management. So we can start to think about things like context-aware access, where we can look and say, oh, well, I'm only going to allow access to these corporate resources under these set of conditions that browser is reporting back to me. And so there's a lot more to come on that, and I would encourage you, our big cloud conference is next in July 25th, I think. And there are going to be a lot of announcements around some of this stuff during that time. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Do you have any device management capabilities for shared devices?
So that's a great question. So I was just at the Android Enterprise Summit. So I'm hyper-focused on the knowledge worker use case right now, which is you've got one user, that user logs into multiple devices. I want to make sure that they have a consistent experience across all devices. There is absolutely a need to support shared devices and dedicated devices and that sort of thing. So My goal is to become best in class on the knowledge worker use case, and then I will expand in to those other areas. And the reason I mentioned Android Enterprise is because that's clearly the direction that Android's working on as well. And you can see when they, in their public materials, that their roadmap is very focused on expanding beyond just, information workers to these other use cases. Anyone?
We do a lot more with machine-to-machine identification. Like say, we have something on-prem, we have to go to Google, or the cloud, we have to make sure that our TPM matches yours. Do you have anything coming out like that? Or
You're getting a little outside of my area of expertise, so I don't, I can't answer that.
back to the enterprise devices.
Yeah. So I have some things on the roadmap I can't talk about. But we are looking at everywhere that enterprise data is accessed. We want to make sure that we have information about the device that's being used to access that, and that we can control policy on it and make sure that device is secure. And so you could infer that there are other things to come from that. So, anybody else?
I'd just like to understand a little bit about your policy engine and what kinds of configurations you can do. Just a couple of basic points there would be helpful.
Yeah, so it's super easy to look up. By the way, if you just go to look for Cloud Identity or G Suite mobile management, and we list every single policy that we manage. We can do things like, so there's the device policies, which we can do things like check for a compromised or jailbroken or rooted device, and we can block access if you're there. We can do things like, say, if you are unable to check in, all of this is contingent on you're on the device and it pings a server and says, is this device good? So we can do things like if the device doesn't check in, like someone's stolen the device and they've turned off the access to the public network, we'll automatically wipe the account if we can't check in after a certain amount of time, things like that. So that's on the device management side. Then there's a whole suite of functionality that I haven't really touched on that much around the application management side, which is making sure that you have access to the apps that you want, so you can whitelist, say, if you're a G Suite user, you might whitelist Gmail, Drive, and Calendar and automatically push that. We can also do things like support custom configurations by domain for applications. So the classic example here is if you're pushing a VPN app to phones, as an administrator, you would prefer that your end users don't have to go in and put the VPN server address into each phone. And so we can push, on Android, we can push a managed configuration to the phone and do that. So we're fairly robust. I think we have the bulk of the bells and whistles that you would see in some of the dedicated EMMs that are out there. So. Geofencing is coming. It's not something that I have today, but it's certainly on my roadmap. So, yeah. Anybody else? How are we doing on time? If there's nothing else, thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it.